test on Wednesday. That will be covering all course content up until this point. So whatever we get through today, which is hopefully all of lecture 3, will be on the test. Okay? I will be assigning the major assignment. I'll be posting it tomorrow because I'm going to speak a little bit. I'll post it tomorrow if you can't look at it. I'm available after the test if you have any questions or concerns about it. Unfortunately, next Monday there's no class because it's a weekend, the 22nd. Yeah? 22nd, so no class on Monday. So the next time we're going to see each other after that, we'll see the Wednesday. So I'll talk about it by then. I'll talk a little bit about it then, but you should have already started to okay, so email me, contact me after, come see me after the test, talk about it, and I'll be happy to go with it. Sounds good? Okay? No one ever comes to visit me around, so I feel lonely. Feel free to come and bother me. Typically, I'm in my office between 11 and 1, and then if you need me after, just let me know. You can always stay after. Okay? Sounds good? I'll talk about the format of the test at the end of class. Okay, here's what it looks like. It's pretty straightforward. It's not too difficult. 55. All right. So we need to finish this up. I hope that if you didn't have the article read by last week and you did it over the weekend, we're going to follow that thing that we need to follow with the papaya. So the real goal of this is that it's a lot easier to actually see how things function. It's easier to see linkages or relationships, the idea of governance, speciality, and embeddedness. When you start to look at products or specific things, you can start to see that how these two things sort of function, the role that governance, speciality, and embeddedness play, has a lot to do with what is being produced. Yeah? The thing. Not only where it's produced, but where it's consumed. Yeah? So it's important that you look at that process, but it's always hard to sort of really wrap your mind or your head around how it functions in reality without looking at examples. That's why I like to use lots of examples. Yeah? It just helps make sense. Remember, it's not uniform. And all products and all things follow the same sort of way. Follow the same sort of parameters. Right? They're going to be different for different types. So again, think about your full production chain, that network, in terms of that value add that happens in every individual space. Who's Mina? Who's Mina? Who's Mina? What does Mina do? She works at the grocery as a buyer. She buys stuff. Now, what do we know about Mina? What does she tell us about herself? I don't know if you guys realize how affordable papayas are in grocery stores nowadays. Yeah? I have papaya in my lunch. My wife bought a case of papaya. She had 5 papayas in it. So for $9. Yeah? Papayas, she feeds them to the kids. Like the baby likes to eat the lunch, blend it all up. Yeah? That's pretty affordable. Considering I don't have papayas in my backyard, they're coming from far distances, and the fact that I can eat them at any time. I think this is 12 months. I can buy papayas. Right? What do we know about Mina? Okay, what kind of a store does Mina work at? Well, before I start handing things to people. Yeah.
Supermarket?
Yeah, what kind of a supermarket? Yeah.
Exotic fruits and just stuff from other countries, I guess.
Not necessarily. I mean, So grocery stores, most grocery stores will have things from other countries. Yeah? Especially if you're in Canada. Make sense? Why? Because, well, to be honest, would you be eating fruit in the winter if things were sourced from Canada? No. Yeah? You wouldn't. Our growing seasons are what they are. Right? So, what is it about her grocery store? Is it low end? Is it a low end grocery store? Or is it a high end grocery store? This matters. What is it? Guys, you gotta read this article, man. Yeah.
High end.
It's high end, right? She says it's a high end grocery store. What happens if the product has a bruise? There's a bruise on the product. If a fruit has bruises or there's any blemishes on the products that they sell, what happens? Yeah. Can't sell it at that store. She even goes out to tell you that her mother, yeah, would never buy fruit at her store. It's too perfect. Right? The fruit is too perfect. Why is that significant? Yeah. Different taste, different consumer. Think about this. Yeah? If you come from a developing nation, or you come from a specific place, first of all, who here eats fruit? Yeah? Who here eats apples? Apples are a really good example. So, what happens when you have an old apple? What happens to the apple? Yeah?
Brown.
So it might change color. What happens to like the skin of the apple? It shrivels. It starts to get like really shriveled. And you might develop bruising, which then turns into like mush, and it starts to go into the core of the apple. Who here eats those apples? Yeah, one person? You read it or you have a question? No, you do? Yeah. Me too. Yeah? Because you're the only person that puts their hand down. I eat those apples. I eat those apples with a knife. Yeah? I cut out the bad parts and I eat the good parts. Yeah? Who here would not even cut, like just throw it in the garbage? It's okay. Yeah? My wife's like that. My wife, she sees a shriveled apple. Like it's either going to be made into like some sort of like cake or something, or it's going in garbage. Very simple. Yeah? You're not going to eat it like that. Whereas I grew up in a household when I was young, where we used to eat what we had in the backyard typically, and none of that stuff is perfect. Yeah? Ever. It's great. It had weird bumps and like bruising, and sometimes it had worms in it, so you cut that part out. Yeah? Just what it was. Right? There was no, that's a byproduct of culture. When she says her mother, being an immigrant from wherever she was from, would never purchase perfect fruit. It doesn't need to be perfect. But think about that pressure. What does that put pressure on? Who gets that pressure? Who receives that pressure? Yeah. The growers. They need to develop and innovate to produce a perfect product, or else the buyers will not purchase them. Yeah? It's that simple. So a lot that goes in. What color's chicken? What color's chicken? What is that? You go to a grocery store and you buy chicken. What color's your chicken? Skin of chicken. What color's skin of chicken? Is it though? When you go, it's white when you go to a store. Why is it white? You're being about these things? It's yellow. Chickens are yellow. Skin of a chicken is yellow. You kill a chicken, it's yellow. I've seen chickens killed, and I've never seen a chicken killed skin and be perfectly white. Ever. When I go to a grocery store, that drumstick has perfect white skin. Yeah? Perception. Right? I used to work in a cut meat for years. I was a meat cutter. I wasn't really big into school for a really long time, and I thought I was just going to be a meat cutter. I cut meat. I was working in the grocery store when I was like 15, and I always cut meat. Yeah. And the grocery I work at services Italian people typically. When I used to work, I worked at 3. The clientele on 2 of them was Italian, and one of them was a larger Jewish population. And so the 2 were quite different, like in terms of what they buy, how much they buy, price points. Right, it's very different. It's a very different clientele. From both stores. Even the Italians, I used to work in a store in the city, then I worked in a store in Vaughan, and then in Concord Thorndale was another one. So very diverse from all 3 stores. Very diverse, very different tastes, very different likes and dislikes, all that kind of stuff. And I remember people coming in and making requests for certain things. Let me give you an example. There was a woman that came in one time, and there was a package on the shelf, she took the package, underneath where the label was, the meat discolored. Yeah? So it discolored because there was no light. Yeah? Had nothing to do with anything. There's no light, and so there's a bit of discoloration that happens there. When 2 pieces of meat touch each other, they discolor. So if I were to cut a strip-loin steaks, got a whole loin, and had them down, and the meat was touching each other for about 10 minutes, okay, well 10, 15 minutes, the meat would turn like a dark color, yeah? It starts to discolor. There was physically nothing wrong with that meat, yeah? But I couldn't cut and leave and then go do something, because the second that a customer would open up that package and they would see that, they would be dissatisfied. Yeah? They would think that the meat was old or something was wrong with it. In packaging, we used to put these things in these separators in between meat, yeah? Paper. In between meat so they didn't touch each other. Because clients would go home, they would open their packaging and see that there was discoloration, and they would equate it as if the meat was spoiled. Yeah? Even before I ever touched meat or opened meat, I knew that happened. Because I was around meat all the time. Yeah? Again, I never worked in stores, so nothing was wrong with it. Our perceptions of perfection, or in terms of what we eat and what it's supposed to look like, smell, all of these things are fundamentally different. Based on where you come from, where you live, and how you were raised. Yeah? There's geographic variations by place in micro levels, right? So if I was to go to a Whole Foods versus a No Frills, you're going to see variation in product, the way it's packaged, what it looks like, what it smells, all kinds of different things. In one aspect it's acceptable, and another might not be. Yeah? For one group it might be acceptable, for another group it might not be. So there's huge differences, right? Based on who you are and where you're coming from. Okay, so that's Mina's job. It's R&D. She needs to make sure that she gets the best product for her store, whether it's the things that she would eat or not. She understands the consumer. Okay? So she's responsible for several things. One is the actual ordering of product. Where's the papaya coming from? Initially, where was it coming from? Nope. Yeah?
Jamaica.
Initially. It's coming from Jamaica now. The initial papaya was from Brazil. What was wrong with the Brazilian papaya? Excuse me. What was wrong with the Brazilian papaya? Yeah.
They would have to send it by ship, so they get it before it was ripe.
So it would not ripen on the tree. Yeah? It would ripen on the boat in some controlled environment. Yeah? It would ripen there. And so the product, from a quality perspective, wasn't as good. Yeah? So that was one problem. So she found another source, it was Jamaican. Now, Jamaican papaya, is it native to Jamaica? The papaya native to Jamaica? Not native to Jamaica. Yeah? A farmer started to farm this stuff, where an owner of land contracted this farm out to somebody who had this idea, right, to grow papaya, because the climate was appropriate. They had shipping via air freight, which meant that the papaya ripened on, or can stay on the tree longer. It can be transported much quicker. In this case, it was consumed in the UK. So it's tech and transport. From a governance standpoint, lots of research trips involved. Yeah? There's controls, firm controls. So, as I mentioned, a grocery store controlled the quality of product that was allowed to come into that store. Yeah? What did it look like? Right? It's all about appearance. It's nothing to do with anything else. Yeah? Fruit has a lot to do with appearance. Would you agree? Right? Why is it the first thing you see when you walk into a grocery store? It's usually at the front of the store, right by the entrance. The colors, yeah? Very attractive thing. Okay, so appearance has a lot to do with it. From a spatiality perspective, where does she source from? Yes, the geography of it. Brazil, shipped, no air freight. Shelf life, right? Obviously changes. Embeddedness. What does she have to do so that people ate papaya? We talked about this a little bit last week. What does she have to do so people ate papaya? Yeah, work. So she teach people. Yeah? It's nothing, it's one thing just to put it, okay, here's a papaya, 99 cents, come buy a papaya. It's nobody knows what a papaya is, it's a problem. Right? That's an issue. How do you consume it? How do you eat it? When is it ripe? Do you eat the skin? Do you not eat the skin? Yeah? What part of it's sweet? What part of it's bitter? Have you ever had papaya? As you get closer to the core, where the seeds are, it gets bitter. As you get closer to the outside, where the skin is, it gets bitter. Yeah? So there's a very distinctive place within that you need to consume. So if you don't know that, you cut it open and you take a bite, and the first thing you have is bitterness. Well, that poses a problem, right? You might just keep from buying it again. So it's one thing to bring it into the store, but then you've got to educate the consumer so they actually purchase it. And that's embedded in culture. Yeah? That's embedded in people's willingness to try new things. Okay? Remember, as I told you, from R&D, about each phase, yeah? Information passes one way, or product passes one way, information funnels back, and you adapt. That's what Mina did. She looked at different sources, right, for those different types of fruits. Yeah? She has panels of people that are consuming, tasting, and identifying whether they like it or not. And that information is being passed through, and that's determining where she's going to source from. Yeah? Somebody else. So she's, like I said, she's responsible for research and development, and she's responsible for consumption. Yeah? So she's a buyer, she's doing the research and development in terms of where to source the product from, and from a consumption perspective, she has to teach the people how to eat it. Yeah? One thing is to bring it in, but you need to sell it. Who's Tony? Yes, he's the importer. What do we know about Tony? What do we know about Tony? He's a middleman, right? He goes in between point A, point B, point C, right? His responsibility is to import the products which eventually get sold to the stores. So who's Nina dealing with? Tony. She doesn't deal with anybody else. She doesn't deal with the farm, she doesn't deal with the picker, she deals with this guy. Tony is responsible not only for papaya, but for a bunch of things. Yeah? Tony has a lot of risk. Dealing with lots of importers. What happens if a subpar sort of product gets sold to Tony? Is it easy for him to lose contacts? Is he worried about the farm and the conditions, the work conditions, in terms of where the product's coming from? Does he care about the farmer? The pickers? Tony care about them? He does. Not from a personal level. Couldn't care less. Tony cares about them for one real reason. He wants to make sure that the work conditions, that if he wants to make sure that if he tells Mina that he can bring her 1,000 papayas a month, that he can get 1,000 papayas a month. He needs to make sure that the work conditions are adequate on those farms. That there's some sort of guarantee, right? That chain is not going to be broken between him and Mina. Next, from a tech and transport, home coordination, farm visits. From a governance, outsourcing papaya, yeah? Handling the shipping of those papayas. From a spatiality, he's concerned about exchange rates. What? What does it affect? He says it affects my, it affects his bottom line. Yeah? And so he has multiple sources that he gets from, that he imports from. And he'll swing, right? Where he buys from, depending on what those current currency conditions are. Right? Because if the dollar's not right, he loses profit. And so he needs to have multiple suppliers. And that's to protect himself, right? To give himself other options for protection reasons. Those things are spatially embedded. There's a spatial element to that, in the sense that exchange rates exist within certain borders. Yeah? People that share their currency. And so this is why he sources from multiple places. Embeddedness, farmer options. Yeah? What exists on those farms? What's there? Right? In terms of what's embedded in those communities. Who's Jim and Philip? So who's Jim? Yeah. He's a farm owner. Who's Philip? He sort of runs the show. Yeah? Is Philip a Jamaican? Is Philip a Jamaican? Is he a Jamaican? Yes, he's Jamaican. Is he a white Jamaican? Is he a white Jamaican? Why am I even referring to this? Yeah?
He was told he was raised in the UK and he went to Jamaica.
No, that was the farmer. Yeah, that's Jim. Yeah? Philip White?
Since he's so hard on the workers, they were going to say that he's black, but he's white man.
Is a white man's heart. Yeah? Think about that. Think about that. These are obviously things to overcome. So, Jim hires a foreman. The foreman has to live, he's got to feel like the farm is his for a control mechanism, that big brother kind of idea. He lives on the farm. He watches the workers. The workers on the farm that are pickers and packers and all those individuals are usually related to one another. So if anyone ever calls in sick, yeah? It says in the article, he says that they could cross-reference it with their family members, which put pressure on them to show up for work. Yeah? Philip was treated poorly because he had a management role. And the workers that worked for him would tell him, "You forgot your roots." Yeah? Again, this big brother being watched. They referred to him as having a white man's heart. There's no racial element. Right? In terms of, so there's you know, we live in a place where we would like to think that it doesn't exist, but there are markets where it does. Yeah? Right? Where things like that do that. And so, you know, in that article, they make a point to state it. Jim coordinates with Tony, coordinates with Phil, so that people can come on the site to see their actual farm and to ensure that they meet their quotas, right? Whatever that might be. From a government perspective, they actually manage the manufacturing process. Jim appoints Philip. Philip is the person who makes sure that everybody does their job on that farm. Okay? They worry about exchange rates and competition because they don't want to lose Tony or guys like Tony. Yeah? From buying their product. If they stop buying their product, they have no business. It's embedded in Jamaica, in that economy, in that market, as a result of the local labor supply and the wage conditions. Yeah? What you can pay people, how you pay them, how you treat them as employees. These things are regulated. It's embedded in those markets. Yeah? If somebody wanted to pay you less than minimum wage, what would you do? What would you do? You say, I know minimum wage is like $12, I'm going to pay you $6. And you're not a waitress, and you don't work in the restaurant business. Right? Or your tips are included in your wage.
So I think they're trying to change those laws because it's just asking you to pay.
Can't guarantee a tip, right? But I think it's pretty BS that you have a whole industry of people that pay less than minimum wage
and we're reliant on, money that would be funneled through. It's mind-boggling. So they're looking to change this. I don't know if it's changed yet, but they're looking to get this changed. But what would you do if somebody told you I'm going to pay you less than that? Oh, I do like that 8-hour work day. Yeah, 40 hours a week. Nah, you're going to work like 70. Yeah, overtime? Nah, man. I'll give you a high five when you leave. Who'd be okay with that? We got laws, yeah? You're protected as employees. We got unions, yeah? Which restrict certain things like that from happening. Not everywhere. Go on, right? That's where you work. Right, but there are some of these conditions, these laws that protect people. That's embedded based on where you are. Are labor conditions everywhere identical? Of course not. Picker and the packer. Yeah? Very manual labor. Again, from a manufacturing perspective. Basically, their job is to pick, pack, and get that stuff out to market. They're constantly monitored by the farm foreman. Yeah? Spatiality, the distance from the market, or from the farm and the market, yeah? Also, in terms of where they live in relationship to the farm, based on what their hours of work are, and again, what they get paid, yeah, and how they work, right? What that work environment's like. We talk about healthcare, you refer to healthcare in the article, you refer to a bunch of things, okay? So you need to know this for your test. Okay, so make sure you just listen to this lecture, not good enough. And I need to read that article. Does that make sense? Yeah? You have these 4 stages, you got multiple people from multiple backgrounds that are being linked. Grocery stores are the easiest way to actually look at some of that connectivity between places. Right? Because the products you get there aren't necessarily ever from where you're buying. Yeah? They're sourced from different places, right? From different markets. They link different people, some of the richest and some of the poorest. Okay? Before I move on to the next lecture, I want to make something, just a quick, if you think about the importance of geography in some of these things. Does anyone know where the former meat packing district was in the South? Like slaughterhouses. Used to smell a little bad. Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, it's now like a mall that's in the area. It's not St. Clair. Basically between like Kiel and Runnymede, that whole area on St. Clair was slaughterhouses. My parents used to live on Kiel and Wilson, not Kiel, Kiel Lawrence area. And they tell me stories that when we were sitting on like their porch at night, in the summer, hanging out, with the neighbors or whatever, the wind was blowing just right. And you could smell, not even smell the smell of like dead animals, basically, in their neighborhood. They were like pretty far from where that is. They're not there anymore. They close them all down and they ship them off. So the majority of meat packing now and meat comes from Newmarket. Now the majority of our Ontario like meat, if you're buying Ontario meat from Newmarket. There's still a couple. Like Corsetti Meats, I think it's still on St. Clair, but they don't do any slaughtering there anymore. Yeah, it's only packing, right? So it's like a packaging plant. But that's not moved because of land prices. Yeah? So you think about, again, it's a small scale, right? But how quickly operations will shift. That was a huge form of employment for a lot of people that reside in the city of Toronto, right? There's a lot of slaughterhouses. A lot of people worked in there, in that industry. There was a immediate population with service. There was, they were servicing the grocery stores in the city of Toronto, which had the majority of the population. Yeah, so they were close to market. Then they moved to Newmarket. Okay, now geography changes, distance, the notion of distance is different now in terms of service. And the land's lost. Yeah, and they've actually moved closer to the farm. St. Clair didn't have the farm, so the animals were generally transported to those areas. Yeah? That was our meatpacking district. So you see this happen all the time. Land use will change in cities for these specific reasons, right? So we can look at anything. From micro to macro. Yeah? Typically papayas are coming from all, a handful of places. Yeah? Fruits, vegetables, these are obviously geographically sort of, tied, so it's a little bit different, but other things that can be transported. Meat can be consumed anywhere, yeah? I can grow chickens in my backyard. If I wanted chickens in my backyard, could I have chickens? Are they resilient enough to handle our winters? Sure, yeah? I can have animals. Actually, the bylaws in Etobicoke permit me to. If I want to have a chicken coop, I can have a chicken coop. Yeah, if I want fresh eggs every morning, I could have chickens in my backyard. Yeah? The geography of that type of stuff is very different than papayas or coffee or these other types of things. And so the nature of all this is going to obviously change. Yeah? Does that make sense? So we talked about different places, but it depends on what you're actually consuming. Think on a micro level. Where you live will change the accessibility, as I mentioned, right? Like, do I live in a neighborhood which has no frills or a Whole Foods? Yeah? Is it a Loblaws or a No Frills? Is it a Metro or a Food Basics? Is it a products change? Is it a flavors change? A taste change? Sure, right? We have variety. Is that a byproduct of the neighborhood? And so again, we talk about countries, but you can talk about communities, neighborhoods in those cities. It's pretty cool, right? To see that, that there's a major difference. If we have a chance, we'll watch this little video with the luckiest nut in the world, but I gotta get through the content first, and then hopefully we'll watch it. Sound good? Okay. Any questions about that? None? Okay. We're gonna now talk about technology. Okay? Which again, we've already obviously talked about this a little bit, but how important technology is in actually driving, being a vehicle, okay, that actually permits globalization to actually happen. Yeah? I mean, if you think about the papaya example, it's hard for somebody in the UK to eat papaya if there's not technological infrastructure there that will actually permit that to actually happen, or foster that to happen. So technology does play a major role in a lot of things. Some usually I don't believe it's the driving force, but obviously some people do. I think it's the vehicle, as I mentioned. I think it's it allows things to happen, but it's not the reason why it happens. Okay. There's several perspectives in terms of technology, and we're going to look at them. So 5 are technology as a material substance, knowledge, practice, technique, and society. And we're going to look at what these mean, okay, within each of those contexts. If we want to understand technology, we need to understand what technology is. Yeah? So, like, I'll give you an example. If I have a rock, and I smash the rock on something, and I hammer something in, and I realize, okay, I can use this rock to hammer this thing. Yeah? What are the implications of that? What societal implications does something like that have? Yeah? Is it just a product which allows me to do job A or job B? Does it change the way we live? Does it change how we consume? Does it change how we work? Does it change how we function in society? And so this is the hardest thing, is that oftentimes we think about technology, we're thinking about a tangible thing. Yeah? This is it. This technology, yeah? This is technology. This keeps my hand from burning when I buy coffee. Is that technology? Sure. Yeah? Someone said, okay, we're going to some cardboard. We're going to glue it. It'll be perfect size to put on your coffee. Yeah? I think Tim Hortons is the only one that hasn't got this right. If you get a small coffee, this thing doesn't work. So you have to get a medium, or you burn your hand. But this is technology. Something is being created, yeah, to prevent something from happening, right? For usage. Okay? This is what we refer to as technology as material substance. Yeah? Yeah? Technology is material substance. It's a passive object or a tool. With these things, we don't actually consider the impact that this has on society, or even if it does have an impact on society. Yeah? And we don't think about the consequences of it. We don't think about how it's going to be embedded in those cultures. Okay, so oftentimes people just, this is what it is. Yeah, I have a hammer. Yeah, this is a hammer. It hammers nails. That's what it does. It's a screwdriver. Screwdriver. It just screws into different things. Just about what it is. Okay. Then we have technology as knowledge. It's fundamentally different. Here we have ideas. Yeah. The notion that you have an idea, which is a process preceding creation of an object or artifact. Right? We create, we design for that idea. We design something from the idea to actually develop a specific object. And technique is related to how that object is used. Now, how do I use this individual object? So this is technology as knowledge. These ideas which are then designed into things, yeah, which have certain techniques in terms of how they're used. Yeah. Then we have technology as practice. It's probably the most systematic view of what technology actually is. It's beyond the substance. It's beyond knowledge. It's about the normalization of technology into our actual society, into our day-to-day lives. This talks about how it actually changes behaviors. Yeah? How technology can change the way we act. Think about the television. Now, what does television do? So television was technology. What did it give you? So think about it from a positive perspective. What did it give? What did TVs give?
Media.
So, is that positive? Maybe. Yeah, it gave us more of the root. So yes, it gave us media. It gave us entertainment. A new means to receive information in general. Yeah, I mean, they use it as a marketing gimmick. It can be used for multiple things, but it's the fusion of information, communication, a way to communicate. Yeah? They give us this opportunity to visualize and see things. It allows some of the poorest people, yeah, to interact and view things that were, really structured for the elite. I think it was sports. Yeah, I think realistically, think about sports, right? Sports is costly. Yeah, it's costly to attend games. There's also geographic variation. You look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, the most viewed team. Yeah, in the National Hockey League, the largest following. It's not just in the city of Toronto. Yeah, it's not just bound to the city of Toronto. It stretches way beyond that. Yeah. Way beyond that geography. I mean, I know guys from that grew up in like rural Saskatchewan. Yeah, rural Saskatchewan, and they are legitimately, one or two fans, either Habs fans or Leafs fans, and they're like diehard. Yeah, so it's not bound by geography. Yeah, it's not bound by that. Now, typically, you got your media, right? You got that level of entertainment or that level of that sort of communication via the radio, yeah. And then all of a sudden, you have this element of visualization that comes with it. And so now, yeah, you're bridging some of those gaps, yeah? Which is pretty cool. If you think about it, you sit down and actually think about it, it's pretty amazing. And last night I watched Nashville, yeah, in Anaheim. Anyone else watch that game? It was spectacular. Like it was spectacular. It's a great series. It was awesome. Anyway, so I'm sitting there and I was watching this game, and my wife was next to me. It was Mother's Day, so we had like a barbecue thing with her mom and mom. And then everyone was leaving, and the game was on. And I was like, I just sat on the couch for like 5 minutes. I put the game on. I was watching it. I looked at her and said, this is amazing. It's like actually spectacular. I'm sitting here and I'm watching this game. Yeah, it's in a different time zone. Yeah, it has no like this is. All my Sportsnet channels were watching this event, this game unfold. And the availability is what's fascinating. You sit there and you don't really realize it. I get the same sense of like, the same thing, I get Italian channels at home. I watch. I started off as like soccer. I used to get to watch soccer games that I couldn't get on regular television after TLN lost its contract with Serie A, so I couldn't watch the games, so I had to buy this package. And so I had this package to watch soccer games, and eventually I got into like the news. And then like, you get a different perspective on the same world events that are happening somewhere else. And that's pretty amazing. Yeah, I got family that comes here from Italy. I'll never forget, it was for my sister's wedding. And there was like this huge like scandal in Europe at the time, in Italy. They basically were arresting people left, right, and center. Sure, there was Stony time where, actually no, it was my wedding. And so they were arresting people and they didn't know what the hell was happening, but there's all these government officials that are getting like basically arrested for laundering money and stealing money and all these like money-related offenses. And they were here and they were watching this unfold in their countries and on my country. Yeah? Availability. Yes, so it's a positive aspect. What's the negative for something like a television? What did the television do that would have been a negative? Yeah. Not all good, is it? Yeah, right? Maybe it gets you stuck on the couch to watch certain things. Yeah?
Reduce physical activity.
Yeah, maybe the physical activity, right? So, are you going outside less? Like these kids these days, man, it's mind-blowing. When I was little, when I was a young kid, I woke up in the morning and I went outside. And I played outside all day. And when I had to come in, it was because somebody came outside and forced me to come in to eat. Then I'd go in and I'd eat something, and I'd eat so fast to run back outside. Yeah? And I was thinking about it, like we never even went to the bathroom. Like, no, we just didn't do it. I'd just stay outside all day. I remember I used to go home, I'd be so, especially in the summer, so thirsty that I would like throw water right back in my mouth. Because I literally did not want to leave whatever the heck I was, like what I was doing, even go get a glass of water. Yeah? I used to ride my bike for days. I went bike riding like not that long ago. I couldn't sit down for like 3 weeks. Now then I was like, how the heck did I manage to stay on my bike from morning till night? Now these kids like they're holding iPads and iPods. Yeah, it's about video games, sitting on a couch watching TV. Like it's just a fundamental shift in how we do things, in how we interact, right? Leads to obesity, maybe issues with obesity. Yeah, this is a huge concern for me. Like as a parent, I don't want my kids to watch TV. Go inside. If it's cold, put a jacket on. If it's hot, take your jacket off. Yeah? But be outside, interact with people, play. Yeah? Experience nature. Go for a walk. Play hide and seek, climb a tree. Yeah? Very fundamentally different. This puts stress. How about communication? How's communication effective? Every Thursday, I don't go anymore, but I used to go a lot more. Every Thursday I used to go with friends. We used to play every Thursday. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Very rarely they don't play on Thursday. So we used to go to this part of the chicken wings, and beer and watch the league game. We did this religiously every Thursday. There's a group of us, right? We go there, watch the game, go home. Watch the game, go home. And then, smartphone thing started to come up, and we had a WhatsApp group. And literally, if one person would miss, yeah, we would sit there, and this is absolutely true. We'd sit on these seats, it's mind-blowing. We'd sit there, and instead of having a conversation with the guys in front of me, we'd be ripping on the guy that didn't show up. Yeah? We'd be teasing him, like, where are you? Like, what are you, like, making fun of him for whatever he wasn't doing or doing. Yeah? And we're sitting next to one another, and we're communicating via text. Yeah? What does that do for interaction? You guys can't spell. Can't spell. I'm a terrible speller, but I have an excuse. English wasn't my first language. Yeah? People are terrible spellers because of spell check and this abbreviated language that you now use via text. Yeah, I can't tell you guys I get emails with just the letter U. Yeah, like the Y-O-U, U.
yeah? Or laugh out loud, or smiley faces, yeah? All the time. Communications changed. People can't communicate like they used to. You're not forced. When's the last time, I think I talked about this already last week, but when's the last time you got a phone call from somebody? Yeah? I think I was telling you guys, I don't know if it was you guys or the other class, but if my phone rings, I think something bad happened. Right? I legitimately think something bad happened, because or else you can just text me when I see I'll answer. If you're calling me, it's because it's an emergency. We don't speak to one another anymore. Yeah? It's a very different world that we live in. And so, it's not just one thing to look at technology in terms of what it is as a thing, but you need to look at it in terms of its practice. How is it utilized? What does it do as a result of that? Think about the degree that you guys are connected nowadays. Yeah? You can never be offline. It's gotten to the point that it's not acceptable to be offline. Yeah? It was Reading Week like 3 years ago, when a guy that works with me, he went to South Africa. Then he was in, he went on some like safari thing after. He went up to the Kalahari Desert, and he was on like some safari thing. And the chair of the department, I never forget it, was emailing him. And he knew I was buddies with the guy, and so he comes to my office and he says, "Hey, where's Steve?" I'm like, I didn't say, I was like, I don't know. I'm not really sure. And he goes like I've been emailing him for like 4 days, he hasn't responded. I'm like, what's he? He's like, where's he? Like in the desert or something? And I was like, 4 days. Unacceptable. 4 days, no email response back. Right? The guy was like, in like a cage somewhere, right? Because I don't know if you're show me pictures. It's the most bizarre thing, right? When you go to like some of these like areas, as you're in the, like say you are the zoo, yeah? Like cage you from the rest of it, and you're just kind of like in their habitat. It's like bizarre. It's like the reverse of like what it. Anyway, show me a picture. But this guy's like in like this like caged community to make sure like a lion doesn't come and like eat him, and no email service, right? No availability of email. In 4 days, and people are freaking out. Yeah? Freaking out because they can't get a hold of the guy because they have to ask him a question about something that's clearly weight on our rules. Yeah? So that's what we've become. Yeah? That's what we've become. So with every new invention, with every new technological change that we experience, this fundamentally changes the way that we interact. Who eats dinner here with their phone on the table? The phone is next to the table. Yeah? Who here does not? That's part of their question. Yeah. Fundamentally, like, I mean, I sit there, I was at a wedding on Saturday, my buddy got married. I was sitting at the wedding, I'm at this table, and everybody at the table had their cell phone on the table. Like, it was exciting. I was like, we got married on a golf course, and the guy that did the ceremony for the marriage, he says, hey, but they have to make this like announcement about people's cell phones. People were getting seated together, it's like 10 minutes spiel about cell phones, and I remember sitting there like, thinking like, this is hilarious. Yeah, like, what, like, the fact that you have to tell people to turn off their phones because there's a wedding ceremony going on is just mind-blowing. Yeah? I look out, this is not to work on any wedding, but I see you guys on your phones all the time. We're speaking, and you guys are doing this. Yeah? I have a good vantage point right here. I see everybody. It's what we do. Yeah? It's what we do. So again, there's this negative force. Yeah? There's pros, there's cons. I think a really cool thing to remember here, guys, last point that I made on this, is this idea that there's a group of people that are out there that actually argue that people actually cause problems that technology provides solutions for. And you have these individuals that basically counter that with this idea that, well, to be honest, problems related to technology are a result because people have created those problems in general. Right? So there's not this like solution to a problem. Is the problem actually a problem? Does that make sense? Yeah? And so if you think about like wanting to be connected, wanting to stay connected to people, like all of these things come into question in terms of the importance, the relevance in terms of how we interact and what it's used for and what it's fixing. Okay?
Okay. Technology as technique. Here we're talking about a sort of a goal-oriented view of what technology is. So what do people want technique to achieve? What does technology fundamentally achieve? Yeah? And so what ends up happening is that technologies that are created to achieve a specific goal. Okay, so here we're looking at the materials, the procedures, the knowledge, and the societal norms that go into actually creating these solutions. Okay? Again, within here, technology is sort of seen as this external force. It has sort of a mind of its own. It's not necessarily linked to these societal sort of changes. It doesn't look at the relationship between the technology and society. Just, it's this external force. They're going to keep creating things, and then we'll just keep using them. Yeah? They're going to be used to achieve whatever goal, right, has been set for. Yeah? Technology as society. Here we're looking at sort of this kind of idea of what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Does society drive technology, or does social change, or does technology drive social change? So, what's the driving force behind this? And so I think we talked about this a little bit, and the easiest way to sort of think about this is when you think about your electronics, yeah? Eventually somebody creates something, right? Somebody made something that kept us connected, right? So they create the smartphone that allows us to get our emails on our phone. And that fundamentally changed the way we did things, changed our work day, yeah? Or changed the way that we work and where we can work from. I think eventually, I think it's stupid oftentimes for the fact that people have to work from an office, to me, in a lot of context, like it's just ridiculous, right? So an hour commute a day, if I commute an hour a day, which I do to go downtown, right? It takes me an hour. I live in Etobicoke, it takes me an hour. If I drive on a Saturday when there's no traffic, it takes me about 14 minutes. Yeah, 12, 14 minutes to get downtown. To get to the Spadina exit from my house. On a Monday morning, during rush hour, it takes me 1 hour door to door. Yeah? With transit. In my lifetime, my working life, that would be 1.5 years. So I'm 65, okay, I'm 65. I will lose 1.5 years of my life commuting. I said this to somebody. You know what they said to me? Probably the most ridiculous response I ever got to this was that, oh, it's just 1.5 years, what's the big deal? I looked at it and I'm like, what? I only have time. First of all, I don't know how much of it I have. Yeah? I might have another 50 years, I could have 60 years, I could have 10, I could have 5, I could have 1, I have no idea. Yeah? I legitimately do not know how much time I have, and I lose 1.5 years doing nothing. Commuting on a train next to a stranger. Why can't I work from home? I could very easily go in my basement, with a camera on, you can see me on the screen, from your own home. Would you be alright with that? Save the time for getting here? Obviously there's value in face-to-face, I don't want to take that away. I don't misinterpret what I'm trying to say here, but there are certain businesses, certain models, they don't actually require you to be present, like physically. You can work from anywhere. We're so connected to the point that we can work from anywhere. Anyway, when initially they invented the phone, yeah, that allowed email or whatever it was, right? These ideas of mobility, it started something. And then it made people want more of it. Yeah? Being more connected, more easier access. All of these things. And it kind of spiraled into something much greater than that. But try to sit back and try to actually identify what's driving what. Are they creating things that we want? Or are they just creating things and then making us want it? I think Apple is a really good example of a company like this. Yeah? Because I can tell you, I was never, ever sitting on my couch thinking, wish I had this like little tablet thingy with no keyboard that I could just Google stuff as I sat here. Yeah? Actually, I'm not flipping a magazine. I'd rather flip a digital magazine. I don't know if anybody who sat there actually thought of that. Then all of a sudden, we all need iPads. Yeah? We all need them. They're required. Yeah? Mandatory. I can't function without it. How am I supposed to fly? I gotta get in an airplane. No iPad? That's crazy. Sorry, I need one. I need it. I don't want it, I need it. Yeah? That is fundamentally
Like, it's incredible if you sit back and you think about what they create. Yeah? And what sort of becomes embedded in our society and becomes the norm. Yeah? The requirement. It's pretty spectacular. It's a bad thing, but anyway. Really hard to study this because we oftentimes view this as interconnected or interdependent, so they're both dependent on each other. So it's hard to separate. Well, identify what comes first. Yeah? Because obviously they're related to each other quite closely. Okay. You got utopian views and dystopian views in terms of technologies from a utopian perspective. Here we're looking at people that view this as an important means to achieve progress. Yeah? It's important to achieve progress. I had a conversation with a guy who's really big into the sci-fi stuff. And he said, like, it drives him like nuts that all these world powers spend so much money, yeah, for wars and weapons and all kinds of different things, when it should be for like space exploration, yeah. Like that was the thing that he argued. He's like, there's so much that we don't know, yeah, that could have real value to somebody. Like, this is one perspective, right? But like, that we don't understand, or that that we really just understand this like really superficial kind of small thing about what exists beyond us, yeah. And so if we took all those billions of dollars and we invested it into something, why could in that we could become aware of what sort of exists beyond, yeah, those beyond what we already know. And so that was the argument that he had. And it's like, the big part of him is about achieving progress, yeah, for the science. Yeah, to gain a better understanding of your existence. So that was his argument. Okay? Technology can help us improve our quality of life. It allows us to manage nature. To manage things that we formerly could never manage. Yeah? To increase growing seasons for food. Yeah, to cure illnesses. Like to cure illnesses. Like, there's all kinds of debate now about vaccinations. Yeah, people debate this stuff from all different sides, and there's consequences to each one. And the fact that we've eliminated certain things from existing, and all of a sudden, you have these, the mumps. Everyone get it. I don't know if you guys got it, but I did. When I was a kid, you got that vaccination, measles. MMR, right? Measles, rubella, and mumps vaccination. And then eventually, because there was no more measles, mumps, and rubella, we got rid of the vaccinations. But there was approval of it. You got to think, so I'll give you an example. My daughter gets vaccinated, we go to the doctor. There's certain vaccinations that are covered by the province of Ontario, and certain vaccinations that are not covered by the province of Ontario. The ones that are not covered by the province of Ontario, yeah, are no longer covered by the province of Ontario, because the percentage of people that actually get it is so small that it costs them more money to vaccinate than to treat if you get the illness. Yeah? So they sit there, they look at all of the data, and then they identify what they vaccinate for as a cost. Yeah? Right? It's very slight. No one ever told me this, it just... Yeah. Wouldn't that make sense? Yeah? You sit down, you're like, all right, well, there's 1 million people, or 5 million people, 10 million people, 9 million people, whatever it is, right? You look at the numbers and you say, okay, well, less than 0.5% get this. If we have to treat that 0.5% that would get it, it would cost us this amount of money. If we vaccinated all those people, it would cost this. If that's more than the other, then you make your decision based off that, right? Right, so a lot of times what happens, eventually things will stop, they stop vaccinating for certain things because those diseases stop existing. Again, we do these things allow us to overcome. I don't know anybody that's died from smallpox. Yeah? Fair enough? Yeah? So they invent these things to keep us living longer. I talked about this morning, giving cancer treatments. Yeah, there were certain cancers that if you were diagnosed with these cancers when you were young, or like maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like you were dead. Yeah? That was it. Like there was nothing they could do for you. And now we're at a point where it's fundamentally different, right? We're at a different kind of thing where certain cancers are almost completely curable. cotton time, like completely curable. Yeah? So, utopian view, you spend money, you're achieving progress, you're keeping people alive, healthier, you're promoting this well-being, right? From a dystopian view, it's very different. So here, technology is seen as a regressive force. And so you have like people like Luddites who basically are, completely against technology. They fear it. They think that it basically is the root of all evil. It removes jobs. It gets rid of jobs. It does all kinds of, really negative things. You can start world wars. Yeah. So if you think about this, like you think about everything that's happened with Trump in North Korea, where you have these conversations around these things, where you kind of look at them and you're like, well, if those weapons, that technology behind those weapons didn't exist, would we have these fears? Okay? So that's a very negative sort of perspective. I hope, these are my views. I'm just giving you what the different views would be for either one. Again, so oftentimes, from a utopian kind of perspective, you view technology as having an immediate benefit, but ultimately it's going to ruin everything. Yeah? It's going to be the death of us. Now we're going to create super smart computers that are going to eventually kill us or something like that. Like that's the things that people with this kind of view be looking at. Okay. Some people see it as neutral, some people see it as value laden. So we're looking at what the differences between these are. From a use value perspective, people see technology as neither good or bad. It's neutral. Human application result in need. So this is the gun, right? The gun kind of scenario. No, guns don't kill people. People kill people. Yeah? The gun itself is neither good nor bad, but the person that holds that gun is good or bad. Yeah? So that's that kind of perspective. Although there's been scientific proof, yeah, there's been proof that if you have stronger gun controls, then there's less gun-related violence. Yeah? We see this. But you have people with this perspective. We see this in the States all the time, right? This argument of the First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, or whatever, right? The fact that they have the right to bear arms. And what it means if you remove that from them. Not unconstitutional. Yeah, we can have guns here. You know that you can have a handgun if you want one? You're allowed to have a handgun. You can go and purchase a handgun. There's licensing, there's rules and regulations that will permit you to have it. You can have a gun here, eventually. You can hunt. Yeah, anyone here have a hunting license? You can hunt. You can have guns. Yeah, I have friends, I have family members that hunt. Yeah. Right. Within the proper seasons, they do it legally, they own weapons. I have a friend's father, he has an actual handgun, and anytime he transports his handgun, he has to call in and they give him an actual, he must bring it to the range or whatever, they give him a route. They time the route, they know how long it takes him to get there, and if he deviates off that path, yeah, they basically will send somebody out to get him, like the searching for him. Yeah? It's very simple. So gun controls does not mean eliminate guns. Right? So this is a really important distinction oftentimes that people miss. Is that gun regulation is you regulate, yeah, who can have it, the process, the ease of getting it, yeah, those types of things. It's not the removal. Yeah? You can own, the laws are different here obviously, but in strict, you can own, I can have a rifle at home, I can have a shotgun as well. Yeah? I can't have a sawed-off shotgun. That joke? Anyway, right? So again, gun's not bad. Who has the gun is bad. We see these debates all the time. From a value-laden perspective, ethics, mortality, happiness are basically inherent in technological change. So if you think about this, and I think this is a really important thing to remember here, is that if you have this perspective, you're viewing technology as a very different thing. So for example, the moon landing. Yeah? We landed on the moon, this is amazing. But from a value-laden perspective, what you're saying is, all right, well, you landed on the moon. That cost a lot of money. So where did you not allocate that money to be able to land on the moon? Yeah? So what kind of public, projects or funding did not receive that cash? So did you not invest in education so that you can get to the moon?
Did you, in social services? Yeah? Where was the money not allocated as a result of that? That's a big deal, isn't it, when you sit back and you actually think about it? Yeah, so if I wanna get to the moon, it's gonna cost me billions of dollars. If I take that billions of dollars of public funding, who's not going to get it? Yeah, so, in this perspective is that, hey, well, look, it's embedded in something. It's rooted in something. It doesn't just exist. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Dimensions of technology. Is technology autonomous or is it human controlled? So again, for autonomous technology, humans have limited control. Technology will continue to evolve and diffuse, and it ultimately influence values, social structures, as you mentioned. Things like the car, like automobiles, scale, size, what's used for them, employment. Television, right? Think about TV dinners. Yeah, TV dinners wouldn't exist if you didn't have a television, right? Well, why do you need to eat by the television? Right? You don't need to be stationed by a television. If you think about what TVs used to look like, these big box things, right? They were mobile. Yeah, Bell would have 5 TV, right? They had commercials. They're free to be anywhere. Right? Go wireless. Just pick up your TV, bring it outside. It's fine. Yeah? Very fundamentally different in terms of what that was, right? People, again, will congregate on television for news, all kinds of things. Right? So again, it just changes things. Human control. Here in this perspective, you see social norms and values have influence, right? So they evolve, diffuse, and basically get applied within those contexts, or within whatever context would exist for that capability. Okay. So what is technology? Physical objects, artifacts, or processes, and the applied knowledge or know-how that creates value. So I think the thing to consider here is that technology is all of these things. Yeah? It's all of them. It's the good, it's the bad. It is made up of physical and tangible things. It's made up of applications, knowledge in terms of knowing how to do something. Right? These are all things that are rooted in what technology actually is. And I think the hard thing when we think about technology, we think about tangibles oftentimes, right? We think about the electronic. We think about information and how it's passable or free, or and sort of the infrastructure that's in place for those things. It's not just that. Yeah, it's all these things that we talked about. And again, I want to make it clear, like the things I talked about, these are not my perspectives. Yeah, I don't think that guns kill people or people kill people or guns and people are bad. These aren't my perspectives. These are just ways that people view this stuff. And I bet you that for the majority of people in this class, there's probably some sort of quasi, you take parts of this, right, to form your own opinions on what technology is and how it's embedded in society. Is that reasonable? Yeah, to believe? Yeah, most of us have, our own ideas in terms of what it is, whether it's good, whether it's bad. We can debate this stuff, but that's not the point, right? It's the point to understand what it is. Okay? Technological determinism. This is the idea that technological change is inevitable. And the sole influence on economic organizations, and these are sort of the only things that matter. That you can't stop this process. Yeah? It's the idea that technology is a form of learning and a social, institutionally embedded process. And it's not its own master. It's this idea that it's controlled by somebody, by something. It just doesn't happen on its own. This perspective that technology, in terms of how technology works in a market system, technology changes, and we have innovation as a result. It's important to sort of consider as a result of trying to drive profits, right? So this constant need to innovate, the constant need to find more efficient and better ways to produce things. Because that stuff taps into your bottom line. Yeah? And if you don't innovate, you're generally going to be left behind. Yeah? So there's a capitalist kind of mentality or process that's embedded there. Okay, so again, an important thing to consider. We're not going to take a break, but we'll end early. I'll try my best to do it. Have to get through this. My apologies. You have to go to the bathroom. You're gonna miss some stuff. Just tell the person next to you. All right. We can look at technology in four different. There's four basic types. Okay. And these are the four types of technological change that exist. So one, the first thing is incremental innovations. These tend to be quite small. Small scale progressive modifications of existing products and processes. These aren't huge sweeping changes. They're slow and steady. The idea that slow and steady wins the race. These things accumulate over time to make more efficient sort of ways of doing things. So I'll give you an example. Email. Email is not necessarily a new thing. But then you have this incremental change like Gmail. Yeah? Gmail would be an example of an incremental innovation. You take something that exists and you perfect it. You allow for greater space, capabilities, and so on and so forth. Yeah? Does that make sense? It's an incremental change. It's not radical. There's slight changes that happen over time, so eventually you have these perfected type of systems. Radical changes. These are basically discontinuous events and drastic changes within an industry. So a really good example of this would be the semiconductor, right? They create this product that goes in every single technology, every tech product, yeah? Computers, laptops, phones, right? You put the semiconductors in it, it revolutionizes that industry specifically. Yeah? So again, the semiconductors are a really good example of that. Third type of change are changes in technology systems. And so these are wide changes in technology. So for example, would be like information technology. That would be an example of this. Or the biotechnology, yeah, where you have, again, an entire system of technological changes that affect an entire industry. Okay? And the fourth is changes in techno-economic paradigms. And this is, these are systematic changes, right? These are major changes that sort of influence the way that things are done within society. So examples of this would be like electric power, steam power, computers, where you have these things that are invented that were created, or these advancements in technology that literally affect everybody's day-to-day lives. That's what the computer, how it changed the way that we do everything. Yeah? It changed the way we work. It changed the way we go to school. It changed the way that we consume, how we shop. It has changed everything about what we do. Okay, so these are huge techno-economic sort of techno-economic paradigm shifts that revolutionize society as a whole. Okay, so those are some examples. Again, these don't just happen overnight. They're made up of a series of incremental innovations and radical innovations that come together to make these sort of sweeping changes. Okay? All right. Who's seen this before? Contracting means, taking an economic course, you probably came across it. So here we're looking at K-waves, and so what these basically are is they're 50-year sort of cycles that are linked to very distinctive techno-economic shifts. Yeah, paradigm shifts and how things actually take place. So again, each wave is about 50 years. Each wave tends to be associated with one particular significant technological change. So in K1, we have textiles, we have trunk canals, turnpike roads. Okay, so again, transportation is changing within that. You have an industry that's completely changed. In the second K wave, you have, again, steam engines, railway shipping, locations start to become a little bit more flexible. And so you got to think about it. Before the K2, you're reliant on waterways. With rail, you're no longer dependent on those things. And so all of a sudden you become more mobile. Yeah? You're not stuck to those stops, very distinct places where or the notion of transportation corridors start to sort of adapt and evolve. So a really good way to think about this is that I'm fascinated by prisons. I think prisons are pretty fascinating places, not from a good perspective necessarily. They're fascinating because it's a really weird concept to put people that, you put a bunch of people that have issues. That could be a variety of events, it could be a variety of things under the same roof.
yeah? And you try to have them live together. Yeah, so it's weird, right? So fundamentally, when you think about that, you're kind of like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. But they do. So they're fascinating from that perspective, but they're also fascinating from a geographic perspective in terms of where they are. Yeah? So, anyone ever been to Kingston? Kingston has more prisons, medium and maximum security prisons. The only super security prison in Canada is in Quebec. But anyway, they have more prisons than anywhere else in the country per capita. It's ridiculous. It's like the prison capital of the country. Yeah, there's not just Kingston Penn. There's like a bunch, right? There's a whole bunch. Yeah, like a whole bunch of prisons. Anyway, anyone ever been to Kingston Penn? It's closed now. I went for a conference in Kingston, and I was fascinated by this prison map. Intrigued by them. Kingston Penn definitely built in the hundreds. It's a beautiful building. Yeah? When you stand on the outside, you look at it, it's breathtaking. It's right on the water. And I'm trying to think of a walk. I left the conference, like basically across the street at one of the Queen's campuses. I took a walk across the street. And I walked by, it was right on the water. Yeah? And there's a big wall. And I actually walked through the parking lot, this like security person came like running after me. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I had to like move, like I almost like, I thought I was getting shot or something. You have these big, I'm not even kidding, the wall's massive, and there's these big like towers, but you can't see inside them, so you don't know if there's like a gun pointed at your head or not. It's pretty intimidating. Anyway, I walked by the outside of the building, I'm touching the wall. It's just like, it charges like separation. It's different, it's weird. On my right-hand side, there's a guy winterizing his boat, his sailboat. It's probably like a couple $100,000 boat this guy's winterizing. And I'm walking by the wall, and then on the other side of that wall is it's Paul Bernardo. Yeah? Like, it just you have a moment of like holy smokes, like this is bizarre. And it's beautiful. Like, if you ever been to Kingston, it's very nice. Especially on the waterfront, it's beautiful. Why would they take such beautiful land and build a prison? Not a rhetorical question, Sam. Why? It's weird. Like, you sit there and you're like, oh my god, first of all, this property is probably worth a lot of money. Yeah? Forget about the prison. Like, the whole waterfront there is worth tons of money. It's beautiful. It's very nice. You've got, like, there's like a yacht club. Nice. Yeah? And you got this prison. The building's spectacular. It's old, right? So there's like the building actually looks. It's a breathtaking building when you stand outside of it. You're like, wow. Yeah. Across the street there was a women's prison. There's a museum. Like it's like just prisons. I think I read something that's like 30 or 40% of the Kingston population is not like permanent. It's either students, yeah, or prisoners. I'm not even kidding. Like it's ridiculous. From the amount of prisons that they have and the fact that they're university town. Yeah? Majority of people work in government roles, either related to the prisons or other things like that. It's a really interesting place from that perspective. Anyway, why is it right there? What happens in Kingston on the water? What two bodies of water meet there? Lake Ontario and the what? No. In the St. Lawrence River, right? For the mouth of Lake Ontario meets the St. Lawrence River. Yeah? And so why is that strategic? Why is that important in the 1800s? Yeah?
It was a major shipping route.
It was a major shipping route. It was a really easy way to transport federal penitentiary. Yeah? It was a really easy way to transport prisoners across places. Yeah? Secondly, it made it very difficult to escape from that prison. You could walk down the city of Kingston pretty quickly, and the only place that someone could go is in the middle of that lake. Yeah? So strategic from that perspective. So there's a huge geography around why it's there. It didn't happen by accident. Yeah? And if you look at like some of the position where these prisons are actually located, these old prisons, which they eventually closed down, because they're just not probably, not the best living environments anymore. Yeah? When you start to look at them, they're very strategically placed in space. It does not happen by accident. So it's pretty fascinating. So again, this was a big deal, right? When you're not bound by water anymore, you can start moving inland, yeah? You don't need to be near waterways, right? It's no longer the main form of transportation. That changes settlement patterns, changes where you live, where you start shop, where you decide to settle. That all fundamentally changes. The third wave, we have electrical engineering, so you can cable, build ships, or you can travel farther, faster, obviously for much cheaper. The fourth wave is forest mass production, so basically the way that we produce things fundamentally shifts at this time. We have mass production, so now you have unskilled laborers, right, that are part of a process to create very sophisticated products, and so that changes how manufacturing is done completely, right? It's not, you don't need to have highly skilled labor, one highly skilled laborer, now you have 50 unskilled laborers. You teach them to do this one very specific thing, and that's what they're responsible for doing every single day, is that one thing. You grab this, you do this. Yeah? And you do that all day, every day. Okay? It's a very simple, it sounds, but that's what it was. It broke down. Right? We'll look at this in a lot more detail, but it broke down the way that things were done. And all of a sudden, you got this huge employment boom, right? In terms of, people being able to do things that typically they were never able to do in the past. At the same time, we got highways starting to be built. Why? Well, because people now are buying vehicles. Yeah? Suburbanization happens, right? You get change in development, and you got large populations moving onto the periphery, yeah? And so you start to see what is known as urban sprawl, yeah? You're not linked to the core anymore, you're not tied to the core, you can travel. And the fifth wave is this convergence between information technology, communication technology, and computer technology, okay? So we're trying to see this convergence. So information technology, what it basically is, are these tools and techniques to collect, generate, and report data. Old information technology was simply pictorial representations in written language evolving into printing. New information technology is mechanical, electromechanical, and early electronic technologies that allow these things to sort of transport or be sort of befuddled. And so the biggest thing here is that initial information technology can only move as fast as the transportation network. So there's a lot of friction of distance, yeah? And so now what we have is the ability to translate things extremely quick. And with this convergence between communication, which is concerned with the transmission of info, and computer technology, which is concerned with processing info, with these two things becoming one, we're able to collect data and process data at the exact same time. Yeah? And that changes how businesses make decisions. It changes how inventory is collected and held, and the amount that's held. It changes operations for so many different things, yeah, as a result of that. So it's pretty fascinating. Okay? So again, we have this convergence that's starting to happen. And so we see this, as we move from analog to digital, we see all of these things from the communication side and the computer side sort of starting to come together. They're basically the same system which is used for processing info is being used for transmitting info. Right? So it's happening at the exact same time. So things are being transmitted almost instantaneously. Okay. Here we have, this is sort of a pretty cool look at this, how the Earth is changing in terms of size. And so from transportation technology, think about how things have changed, planes, trains, automobiles, allowing people to get farther faster for a lot cheaper. Previously we had a very high friction of distance. Okay, but transportation and communication were one and the same. Now communication is on its own thing, separate of the transportation network, which is limited in some of that friction. You think about things like the phones and fiber optics, yeah? You think about how quickly it can be transferred from one place to another. You think about this, again, the space-time convergence that starts to happen as a result of this, yeah? The Earth legitimately starts to become smaller, right? As you have these transportation or you have these sort of evolution that takes place in terms of how we can travel and how information can be processed. Well, all of a sudden, the Earth doesn't feel that big. Yeah? We're shrinking the amount of time it takes us to transport goods, people, services, information. Yeah? And that obviously affects scale. Okay, so there's no doubt the world has shrunk. there are two major things that have basically contributed to this. So one is being steam power. Yeah? Steam power is a form of propulsion, so that changed how quickly you can get to certain places. And the other one is linking together of basically overland and oceanic transportation, so canals and stuff like that, right? Being cut out so that transportation can obviously move a lot quicker. So those are two major things that took place that resulted in some of that growth. Okay, here we're looking at basically submarine cable capacity, and so we see this just clear, distinct growth that basically happens throughout time with basically two important communication innovations that have allowed that sort of helps explain some of this growth. And so one being satellite, okay, the ability of basically satellites to process and in helping to communicate information, as well as optical fiber, right? Fiber optics is another big thing. So this is again, look at fiber optics, submarine fiber optics. Some of that growth that exists. So here we're looking again at that cable system that's basically underground, in the water, oceanic cabling. And you can really start to see some of those uneven geographies, can't you? Yeah? It's not standard across every place, is it? And so you can really see who are the winners and losers when it comes to these things. And so, although the Earth is shrinking, for some people it's just as big as it ever was before. Right? They don't experience the same degree of shrinking as a certain place. Okay. Here we're looking at, again, just a bit more of those uneven geographies. 2/3, here we're looking at internet bandwidth. So just a quick number to sort of give you. 2/3 of all the registered domain names are in 3 countries. Okay, so they're basically in the US, and Germany, and the UK. Yeah, so you can sort of see this when you look at internet bandwidth, right? You kind of see that in that picture. Okay, geographies of innovation. So technology doesn't happen without innovation. You need innovation for technology to exist. Innovation is basically at the heart of technological change. When we talk about innovation, we're talking about the creation and diffusion of new ways of doing things. Yeah? So what are the new ways to do basically the same thing we used to do? Or how do we find new ways to do, or how can we do brand new things that we're doing? And so innovation really is the creation and then ultimately the diffusion, right? So the usage of those types of things. And so again, it's at the heart of innovation. There's 2 types of innovation that can exist. You got product innovation and process innovation. So product innovation is basically the development and introduction. Basically, you can redesign a good or service, redevelop that good or service, basically to improve it. And this ultimately would result in greater profits, greater efficiencies. Right? It has to do with the dollars and cents associated with those individuals. You're making an individual product better. So if you think about product innovation, it's a really easy way to look at this is to think about your smartphones. Yeah? Every new smartphone that comes out has, one thing better than it did before. A longer battery life, a better resolution, screen resolution, a faster processor. Yeah? Right? All of these things start to you start to see all these things sort of come up. And the reason why they do that is if they don't change, if they don't innovate that individual product, why would you ever upgrade? Anyone here buy the next phone always? So you're like, so for example, let's think about it this way. iPhone user here. Anyone? Yeah? So every time an iPhone changes, are you the person that just goes and buys a new iPhone? So if they release 2 iPhones in 1 year, do you buy 2 iPhones in 1 year? It's okay, you don't have to be a shot. I work with a guy that's like this. Yeah? He's our IT guy, which kind of makes sense. Right? You can imagine that he'd be buying stuff. He's our IT guy. That guy he goes to about 3 or 4 phones a year. Anytime there's a new phone, he buys it. That's his thing. He buys and sells his old one. I mean, he's obviously out money at the end of it, but whatever. That's what he likes. That's his vice. Yeah? Fair enough. Yeah. So there are people that do that. Miraculously, every time the iPhone releases a new phone in the lineup. Yeah? people sleeping overnight. I learned this, so you know, shoes and stuff like that, they'll release like a new shoe, limited number of shoes. I just learned this recently, because I was like, how these people like standing outside for a buying these shoes, it's just stupid. So I'm like, I got off the subway, I get off, and maybe not nasty, there's an Adidas store. There's a line of people, and I walked by and I was like, they gave me a 20 minutes waiting for it. And it was, I don't know who, someone released the shoe. No, it wasn't Kanye. It wasn't a girl. They're nice to me. Oh God, I didn't understand. That guy's selling t-shirts with holes in it. Yeah? Like, t-shirts with holes. I got lots of t-shirts with holes in it. And I argue with my wife all the time about throwing out. And I have like emotional attachment to these t-shirts. I'm not gonna go buy one with a hole in it though. Like, it's just like, I guess I'm not cool enough. I'm not hip enough. Although I do like mine here. Anyway, I don't know, it was a basketball player. It was, no. No. Stop saying names. No.
Is it like those $700
That's what they retail for after. So anyway, huh? No. No. It's a company. Just stop saying names because I don't like all like. It'll come to me back in the closet. I'm just gonna yell someone's name on this. Okay, anyway. So I asked the guy, I'm like, wait, what are you doing? What do you guys like? They're like sitting on lawn chairs and stuff. You know, and the guy looked at me like I was nuts. He told me what the shoe was for. He's like, it's for this. I said, oh, sorry. I kind of like kept walking. Should I have stuff outside? Anyway, then I was talking to somebody, I'm like, this is like the dumbest thing ever. He's like, well, no, it's not actually. It's actually quite cute for you. And I was like, well, I'll explain. Maybe I'll sleep outside, right? Business opportunity. So the shoes retail for like $100 or whatever, right? But their value is like $300, right? So if you actually line up and you are able to get this limited edition shoe, you can then turn around and sell this to somebody for like 3 to 4 times the price of the shoe. Yeah? There's no innovation in that product. It's a shoe. Yeah, there's an actual shoe. So if people are doing it for that kind of stuff, there's a profit, right? We see it happen all the time with electronics, right? Markets getting it before other markets. So this guy that I work with, the new BlackBerry, the T1, which is going to be out in May, got released in Europe first. So he bought it from Europe. He couldn't wait till the end of May. Yeah? He spent $800 and change to buy it from the UK when it's going to be retailing here for $570 something. So it was worth it for him to spend the additional $300 to get the product first. Yeah? Okay, there's an innovation there. Clothing's kind of weird though. Yeah? Clothing's kind of weird that people would even contemplate spending that kind of money. Anyway, so there's product innovations. What keeps you buying the next iPad, the next iPod, the next cell phone, the next whatever, right? So you have these incremental innovations that happen for the actual product that'll, redesign it, repackage it, that still make it entertaining, for you. Then we also have process innovation. Yeah. So this was, this has to do with how the products are actually made, how things are manufactured, efficiencies within that. Right? How to make things better from a process perspective. And this is interesting when you think of things like Fordism. Yeah? That was a process innovation. It innovated the way that things were manufactured. Later on with lean production, right, the just in time, yeah, which was sort of pioneered by Japanese, in Japan, you have this, again, shift in process, right, in terms of efficiencies and how they made those individual goods and services, right, or individual products. So it's important to understand from a business perspective, right? You don't only need product innovations, but you also need process innovations, right? Both need to change. Yeah, you need incremental. You need to increase that product profile, make those changes, but also do the efficiencies. If you get lost on the backside of that and you don't have product efficiencies, that gets into your bottom line as well, and that can make you, obsolete. Yeah. If you're not innovating in terms of how you make things, it can make it very difficult for you to compete in a global marketplace. Right? So it's not just the product, but the process.
two types of knowledge that exist. Okay, this is, I've already talked about this a little bit, but there are two types of knowledge: codified knowledge and tacit knowledge. So from codified knowledge is a little bit less rich in terms of maybe a little bit form of how knowledge is transferred. This is through documentation, so manuals, things of that nature. Okay, easy to transport over space, right? So if I find a new way to process something, if I have a new innovation, I can document how that works, and I can send it to places, and it would function. In a tacit knowledge environment, these are things that are very difficult to express via codified information. And so, this is one of the richest forms of knowledge transfer. This is the face-to-face. Yeah? Hence why you go to school, and not in an online university. Why you prefer, for a lot of people, to have interactions with instructors at the front of their class. Yeah? You have that one-on-one. The way things are actually transferred, it's a little bit different. So this is the know-how. This is why we have areas that exist like Silicon Valley. Yeah? Where you have a labor force and knowledge that clusters in space for these types of things. So it's important to understand that you have these two different types. Okay? Products have different life cycles. And the life cycle of a product is important to consider, for multiple reasons, but one specifically, it shows opportunities, right? When you can get into certain things or not. And so a really easy thing to sort of look at is that when in the initial development of a product, usually one or two players that are responsible of creating that good, yeah? And so again, very little competition, and the cost of those goods tend to be high. As that product grows, it starts to mature, you get more people coming in, as maturity starts to happen, that product, the price of the actual good, sales increase, the price of that good actually starts to drop slightly, and then eventually on the decline, you start to see cheaper options, it starts to get outsourced to different countries, the process starts to innovate to help reduce some of those costs that might be associated with it, and then again, the innovation started being a prime innovation to give you something new. I think about television is a really good way to look at this. When the plasma was one of the first flat screen televisions, right? The plasma came out. I remember it was in like the tens of thousands of dollars to buy a plasma television. Yeah. The technology before that was projection TVs, right? So there was big behemoth kind of televisions. Yeah. Big speaker at the bottom. All of a sudden, they have this flat screen, which wasn't actually that flat based on today's standards. Like those TVs were like still this thick. Yeah? Imagine getting a TV this thick now. My TV is like this. Yeah? I remember I was like, oh, should I get someone to help me carry this TV out? And I'm like, oh, no. Like it doesn't weigh anything. Yeah? Just carry it up by myself. It's 50 inches. Yeah? I paid $800 for it. Yeah? Not $10,000. Like the first plasma was tens of thousands of dollars to buy a television. All of a sudden, the technology becomes mainstream, yeah? The product starts to mature, the price starts to drop, and people start to buy. And then new manufacturers get into that mix, right? And then all of a sudden, you have decline, and then you got the product innovation. But if you think about it, the cost of a TV, this is a cheap, if you buy a projection TV, it costs more than what. I remember I had a projection TV as a kid, I went with my dad to Best Buy to buy it. Yeah? It's like one of the first. And I remember I was like so excited to be able to watch like a hockey game on this thing. Because I had one of those old like Panasonic wood box televisions, you know what I'm talking about? He was in like it looked like furniture. Yeah? It was like wood. And it had a super little box on the top with your like 1930 converter. So I was all pumped. I went in, and I think my dad paid like 2 G's for this television. At that time it was like, holy crap. Like $2,000? Like this is nuts. Like, I bought a TV 2 weeks ago. A crappy, just like, that's not the best TV. It'd be $800. It's 50 inches, 49 inches. That'd be $800. Yeah? When I bought my first LCD television, I paid $1,600 for a 42-inch. And it was like a big deal. $800 is bigger and thinner. So you can see these things happen. TV is a really good example with anything. Yeah? Okay, look at that product life cycle, and you start to see those points when innovation needs to exist, whether it's a product innovation, oh, it's 4K, oh, my TV is smart, yeah? It's a smart TV. Oh, my television can turn on if I blink, or whatever. Like, it doesn't, like, they make these things for convenience, they're attractive things that make people go out and buy them. So it's a really important, distinction, really important thing to consider. Yeah? Those are product innovations. Efficiencies, well, we can't produce these in Canada anymore, markups are small. Everybody that looked at Best Buy to get deals on products. The markups on televisions are like $0. You don't make any money. You know what Best Buy makes their money? HDMI cable. I used to buy HDMI cables for my buddy by $1. That was the cost. I had like boxes in my basement of HDMI cables. I used to get off. I used to just get like 30 of them. Yeah? They were retailing for like $40, and I was buying for $1. I'm not exaggerating. That was his cost when he bought them. And warranties. Warranties where they make their money. The television, oftentimes they sell a television below the cost. Or near cost. Yeah? Because of the degree of competition that exists. It's pretty nuts. Okay. We'll end off there. We won't get into the spatial network simulation. I want to show you this video real quick. You can just, it's really short, it's funny, it's stupid, and you can educate while watching it. Oh yeah, okay, so the test format, 10 questions, multiple choice. You have to choose 2 out of 3 short answer questions. Yeah? You have an hour and a half to complete the test. You'll cover all the course content from Monday, from last week, Tuesday, or Monday, Wednesday, and this Monday, as well as the reading that I posted. Okay, so multiple choice, 10 questions. Multiple choice, 10 questions. Short answer, you have to respond to 2 of 3. Yeah? Okay? These short answer questions about a page. I give you the amount of space required to answer the question. Sounds good?
This is a film about nuts. It's a film about nuts. That's right, like the nuts and the cashews too. Nuts and so nuts and the cashew. That's what I said. It's a film about nuts. It's a film about trading economic nuts. It's a film about globalization. Nuts are grown all over the world, touching every life in every nation. Starring Mr. Peanut, the luckiest nut in the world, and the rest of his gang. Hit it, boys! Just in case you forgot what this film is about. This is a film about okay, let's get started. This is a bowl of nuts, and some of them have had a bumpy ride. But not me, cause I'm an American peanut. I was born in Georgia, in the deep south, where the silver spoon's sticking out on them.
Okay guys, this is like, it's a stupid little video, but it gives context, and so for your test, it can help you study, it can help you understand some of the concepts that we talked about, so I just ask that you stop talking. Yeah? Because if you don't care, you're more than welcome to leave, but the person next to you might. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yes, the person next to you may want to learn this, right? Valuable content. Yeah, so just be respectful for the person sitting next to you. Whether you want to stay here or not, don't throw off my back. If you want to leave, just leave quietly and I'm fine with that.
Well, I sure was surprised when I realized I was the luckiest nut in the world. I traveled around all over the globe, and I was pretty shocked at what I seen. All around there were nuts, struggling to survive. While he was living the American dream. Our politicians tell us that trade liberalization is going to make things better. But what exactly is trade liberalization? Liberalisation is the process of becoming more liberal or free. Trade liberalisation is therefore making trade more free by removing trade restrictions.
Well, I suppose in theory it sounds pretty good. We all like freedom. But from what I've seen, things aren't exactly working out as planned. We're gonna tell you some stories that'll make it clear why these problems won't disappear. By making trade free indiscriminately, it's only making things worse. It's not a blessing but a curse, and it's happening more every year. This is a groundnut. It's a groundnut. Groundnuts are part of the peanut family. This groundnut originated in Senegal, a country in West Africa. Groundnuts have been grown in West Africa for centuries. They were brought to Africa by the Portuguese in the 16th century. And later on, groundnuts replaced slavery as Senegal's biggest industry. And by the time Senegal got their independence in 1960, groundnuts were their main export crop.
By specialising in the thing that a country does best, and then trading for the other things it needs, it maximises its productivity.
But like many newly independent African states, Senegal lacked the resources to invest in their development. They needed cash, so they got some help from the World Bank. We're satisfied as to your accredited income, and we're glad to make you go home. The World Bank encouraged Senegal to focus on exports to earn the cash to repay this debt. And Senegal's main export was groundnuts. But then, in the 80s, something happened that no one had counted on. Because groundnuts appeared to be a lucrative and stable export crop, other developing countries began to focus on producing groundnuts as a means of earning foreign currency. As more and more countries were producing groundnuts, more groundnuts were on the market, and so the price fell.
It's the law of supply and demand. When supply goes up without a corresponding increase in demand, the price will go down.
With the bottom falling out of the groundnut market, Senegal was getting less more than and they had to borrow even more money just to keep their head above water. Facing bankruptcy, Senegal implemented an economic reform program with the aid of World Bank economists. This program followed the economic thinking of the time and called for trade liberalization,
Which begins with the removal of tariffs and duties.
so taxes on imports of foreign nuts were removed.
Reducing government's involvement in industry.
The state-run groundnut company Sonacos, which had guaranteed prices to the farmers, was partially privatized. And cuts in public spending. They implemented the new strategy for 10 years, but the situation only got worse. As the price of nuts went down, the debt got out of control. And today, Senegal is officially one of the world's most indebted nations. They spend more on paying their debt than they do on health and education combined. Yes, it's time for a story about me. And what a different story it is. American peanuts are one of the most protected cash crops in the world. The U.S. government invested heavily in the peanut trade to set up all the equipment. And to this day, the industry is heavily subsidized. Peanut farmers get a financial bonus from the state for every ton of nuts they produce, which allows them to sell the nuts at a lower price. So it's the 21st century, and what do we find? We're the world's largest producer of the edible kind, with 50,000 peanut farms in the U.S. Today, peanuts are big businessmen, adding $4 billion to the American economy. Peanut farmers have nothing to fear, cause the average American eats 6 pounds of peanuts every year. Unlike Senegal, we didn't need a farm loan. We could set up our infrastructure all on our own, with no debts to repay. We States is a highly industrialized nation. So when nuts like myself arrive on the shelf, we're of the best possible specification. And if one of our trading partners makes up a policy that we're not overly keen on, the threat of sanctions usually helps to resolve any difference of opinion. So I try my best to tell it like it is, 'cause it doesn't have to be like this. It keeps me up at night, 'cause it don't seem right, but I'm the luckiest nut in the world.
Just quickly before we get off, use from this perspective of some of those uneven geographies, yeah? How certain conditions in one place are very different, and the role that states play in protecting certain industries. And so this is a big part of NAFTA, some of the conversations that are happening currently, in terms of what we do with a lot of our, like, we don't have subsidies, but we protect certain, like, if you want to become an egg farmer here, you gotta like literally read the obituaries to see if somebody dies, to be able to get a license to produce eggs. It's just, it's a rule. It's called, we manage, it's a management kind of policy that exists. In the US, they have heavy subsidies. And so sometimes you just think about NAFTA in Mexico. Do you think Mexican farmers can subsidize certain crops? If not, it becomes really difficult, extremely difficult to compete, yeah, with a country that does subsidize certain types of crops. Next to impossible, because those countries can actually sell the products at a lesser price than what it actually costs to manufacture it or to produce it. Does that make sense? Yeah? And so oftentimes you see this a lot with certain types of foods and fruits and like certain types of foods because it's linked to, it's directly linked to national security. Yeah? And this is why we have corn is heavily subsidized. Think about what our diets consist of. Yeah? Imagine if we start subsidizing organic foods. Yeah? Would it be cheaper to purchase certain types of them? We'll get into this when we talk about agriculture, but think about that. Yeah? A country which subsidizes an industry and how lucrative that industry can be as a result of that subsidy versus a country that cannot. And then when more producers get on the market, what happens to that nation? Okay? Right? So that's, again, those uneven, that uneven geography and how location plays a role in some of those things. Okay. I hope you guys have a